Well, good morning, everybody, and welcome to the second day of the January meeting of the Kansas State Board of Education. Under normal circumstances, we would have all crammed into the House chamber last night and been very uncomfortable, but we would have listened to the State of the State message, which is always a kind of interesting uh, sociological event to witness. As somebody talked yesterday, it's interesting to watch the faces, the expression on various people's faces. This morning, under normal circumstances, we would have had breakfast with a special education, with SEAC. That's always something that we look forward to. And today at noon, the most important thing we would have done is to have lunch with the group that we're going to be hearing in just a few minutes. And since basically all of us love to have the opportunity to interact with students, that's going to be something we're going to miss. But we're very much looking forward to hearing from them today. This is to acknowledge that we are meeting by Zoom in cooperation with the Shawnee County requirements for participation in group meetings. And at this time, a motion would be in order unless there are additions or corrections to approve today's agenda.
Jim, this is Dina. I move to approve today's agenda.
Dina and Ben. All in favor, please raise your hand. I notice that all members are present. Thank you very much. At this time, I would like to introduce Stacy Smith, who is going to introduce the students.
Good morning, Chair Porter, members of the Board of Education, Commissioner Dr. Watson, CTSO presidents, and then I'm assuming on YouTube, their families and general members of the public. It is truly a shame not to be with you in person today. It's always a pleasure to see proud parents and the students as they speak. The students assembled to speak to you this morning are, like you, duly elected representative for their groups. From FFA at around 9,000 members and FCCLA at probably around 3,500 members, and FBLA and throughout the list. These students represent and have been elected by like-minded members, and then also probably sometimes not so like-minded. There are disagreements in their organizations, just like there are disagreements across our many communities in the states. And so one of the things that we're able to work on through the IPS and through organizations such as CTSOs are building effective relationships. Those are a part of the skills that are measured through many of the opportunities that they have to participate in. And so measuring and reflecting student experiences is a part of our portfolio opportunities that they have. And I've certainly talked enough and am going to pass you along to the President of Business Professionals of America, Mike Owens from Shawnee Mission Northwest.
Good morning, everyone. It's awesome to be here again. I'm Mike Owens. I'm the Kansas State President of Business Professionals of America. So, as all my other CTSO presidents know, it's been tough, and that's an understatement. We haven't been able to do what we normally do, make those connections with our new members, have our leadership conferences. But with the leadership skills learned through my CTSO and my amazing officer team, we've still been able to give some normalcy to our members. What we've done as an officer team is certain content creation along with quote series and community donations partnering with harvesters. We've worked with state advisors in planning things such as our regional leadership conference and our state leadership conference, but sadly this year are both online, but we're really happy we've been able to have anything at all. So as you see some graphics here created by my awesome officer team, couldn't do anything without them support behind me. First graphic you see is our Harvest Virtual Drive, which also counts to our Torch Award program, which is something we really wanted to keep going this year, even though that it's, weird in a word to put it. So we've changed certain guidelines for community service abilities of torch boards for people who may not be able to go do anything in their community because of certain state guidelines or health concerns that they may have. And then our quote to our right is BPA is more than an organization. It's a family, and family strives to achieve new goals. And that's from Jose Michel, our state treasurer. And BPA is a family here in Kansas throughout all the state and our awesome members. And we really have strived to give some normalcy to our members. So our vision statement here for Business Professionals of America is to be an innovator in career and technical education, providing our members with opportunities for growth through education, competition, community service, and personal development. And that's what we really believe we've been able to do, even over the computer screen and not in person. We still wanted to provide those competition, those community service with the Torch Awards, and then just personal development in a year that some people might have just written off when it comes to extracurricular activities in Kansas. Our annual theme this year is very fitting: envision, empower, and ignite. And that's what Kansas BPA is really good at. They're able to ignite even from the littlest of things. So moving in, our RLC, which we had just a couple months ago, is a regional leadership conference, and that was able to be done because of our national BPA organization partnering with each state. It was really great, and it gave each Kansas member the ability to prepare for what will be our state leadership conference and national leadership conference. Just some images here of the website. So our state leadership conference is early in February. We'll be able to create some bright spot and a normalcy here for our BPA members at a time where it may be difficult. We won't have our social aspect, which everybody knows is one of the most important parts of the CTSO, but we've been working to create mixers and have an online DJ for our state leadership conference through our leadership skills to be able to provide some normalcy for our students. And to end off today, our tagline for BPA is giving purpose to potential. And we have all these great Kansans. I mean, we're Kansas, we're amazing. We have all this potential, and we want to be able to give purpose to that in these weird times. And through my leadership skills and my amazing officer team, I believe even though it is online, we'll still be able to give a great experience and purpose to the potential for Kansas members. Thank you.
Thank you, Mike. Next up, we have Maya Wagstaff from Leavenworth High School, representing the many students associated with DECA.
Hello, my name is Maya Wagstaff, and I have been a part of DECA for 3 years now. Throughout my years in DECA, I have been provided many leadership skills and knowledge to encourage DECA people in managing their time, resources, and overall communication skills. DECA is one of those organizations that has provided not only me, but my other fellow DECA members the opportunity and knowledge of the real world. From my personal experience, I have learned how to run a business through my school's wholesale print shop, coffee shop, and school store. And as a state officer, I have been able to develop my communication as well as social media skills. By serving as vice president of my local high school chapter, as well as reporter on the state level, I have learned that an effective leader must consider other people's suggestions. Leadership is broad and dynamic, which means not only one can entirely decide on all the decisions. I came into this year with many ideas, and me and my fellow officers have learned, I have learned that some ideas are better than others and to always keep an open ear. As everyone can imagine, we all had different views of what this year would look like. But I have learned that flexibility is key, and me and my fellow state officers have decided to focus on our social media presence because that is something that can stay consistent with these changing times. Overall, DECA has not only provided me with the motivation to stay engaged in school, but as well, it's an amazing organization in which I believe that every high schooler should join. Thank you.
Thank you, Maya. Next up, Kaylee Reese from Wellsville High School, representing the students associated with FBLA.
Good morning, everyone. My name is Kaylee Reese, and I'm a senior at Wellsville High School. I currently serve as the Kansas Future Business Leaders of America State President and the National FBLA Mountain Plains Region Vice President. As the world's largest student business organization, FBLA's mission of inspiring and preparing students to become community-minded business leaders in a global society through relevant career preparation and leadership experiences has impacted my life and the lives of over 230,000 FBLA members worldwide. Through FBLA, I have been able to use leadership skills I have gained throughout many aspects of my life. From serving as president of various organizations, to working with the local Wellsville Chamber of Commerce, to serving my community and school in a multitude of ways, I have made significant contributions. Whether it be through organizing and delegating events, assisting with annual community programs, my leadership, business knowledge, and organizational skills have positively served many groups. Most recently, I and fellow Wellsville FBLA members served on the district reopening, operations, and academic committees, which were established at the onset of the pandemic. These committees helped to create a positive and safe learning environment for the USD 289 students. As I have been placed in groups with a multitude of influential professionals and educators, I have felt confident in my contributions and the skills and knowledge I can provide. FBLA has truly taught me to utilize my voice and past experiences to advocate for others. During this past year, I have strived to lead the FBLA members of Kansas and the 9-state Mountain Plains region. I realize that my office terms have fallen during unprecedented times, and therefore, my leadership has had to involve creativity and reflection while still relying upon my past leadership experiences. The COVID-19 pandemic has been a difficult period for everyone. However, I have firsthand knowledge of the social and emotional issues that are plaguing high school students. From not being able to socially be with your friends and family, to the canceling of traditional high school activities and limitations set on scholastic events, all are taking a toll on high school students. To top it off, there is a pressure of trying to learn on a virtual format while still trying to stay positive during this global pandemic. Although I have been frustrated and upset with decisions and situations, as a leader and a role model to my peers, I realize I must set an example of motivation, determination, and the ability to see what lies ahead. I know I am still making a difference. Whether it has been through creating alternative opportunities, such as the COVID-friendly homecoming pep rally I organized, or volunteering in alternative ways, such as creating a community Veterans Day video, I'm utilizing my positivity and leadership to make our 2020-2021 school year as normal as possible. Future Business Leaders of America has helped me tremendously during this difficult time by bringing out my best characteristics and teaching me how to overcome limitations. FBLA will always play an important role in my life, whether it is in the past, now, or in the future. Thank you.
Thank you, Kaylee. Please allow me to introduce Emily Crowley from Tonganoxie, representing the students of FCCLA.
Hello, thank you. My name is Emily Crowley, and I'm a senior at Tonganoxie, Kansas, and I am the current Kansas FCCLA State President. I began my journey within Family Career Community Leaders of America my 8th grade year. I found myself desiring a place where I could build leadership skills, meet new people, and find success. I jumped into the world of FCCLA through participating in competitive events, students taking action with recognition. I gained skills of teamwork, public speaking, responsibility, and preparation. I discovered a newfound love for networking and preparing myself and other peers for a lifetime of success. As time went on, I continued to become more involved in FCCLA, and this led to an increase in my skills as well. I've been supported and pushed to achieve my goals by an amazing advisor team. With the confidence I've gained, I've been able to focus on many crucial life skills. When writing this speech, I continued to think about our mission statement. With each year of experience, I realized this is so much more than 3 icons. Our mission is to promote personal growth and leadership development through family and consumer sciences education, focusing on the multiple roles of family member, wage earner. This part of the mission statement connects with me because as a former peer education member, FCCLA's national programs has been a large part of my life. For example, growing up in the teen year, I became disconnected with my family. This was until I learned the correct communication skills and realized how to enjoy family time with the help of national program Families First. In addition, I've become a better earner, saver, spender, and protector with national program Financial Fitness. Now moving on to the part of the mission statement, community leader. Through FCCLA, I have found a passion for leading my community in a positive and healthy direction. I've used the skills learned in Power 1 unit, Take the Lead, to shed light on important topics such as traffic safety through Seatbelts Are for Everyone and a community mock car crash. In addition, I have been working towards creating a safer community for people of all backgrounds alongside other members of my FCCLA chapter. And finally, as members, we develop skills for life through character development, creative thinking, interpersonal communication, practical knowledge, and vocational preparation. Growing up, I had a large fear of failure. While I continue to have that fear, I become stronger due to the skills and support and success FCCLA has offered me. I am pushed on a daily basis to share my creative and professional ideas. This has taught me to be a better communicator, how to put in the work for success, as well as how to handle failure. I am honored to be part of an organization that focuses on family, works towards student success, and cares deeply about its members. I will continue to live through this mission statement for many years to come, and I am excited to watch others do so as well. Thank you.
Thank you, Emily. Please allow me to introduce Elizabeth Sturgis from Riverton High School, formerly. She is the president of FFA.
Good morning, all. Like Mr. Smith said, my name is Elizabeth Sturgis. I'm a former graduate from Riverton High School in Southeast Kansas and the current Kansas FFA State President, a freshman at Kansas State University. Now, as a freshman in high school with a clean slate of interests and outlooks, I feel the absolute luckiest to have stumbled upon my agriculture education courses. Looking back 5 years later, I noticed so many skills I have acquired and developed through FFA. One of the most prominent skills I have grown through is my public speaking. Through my time in FFA, not only have I been able to apply this skill to competitions I participate in, but my academics and school as well. Whether it was an extemporaneous public speaking event or our Veterans Day breakfast, my experience and time in FFA allowed me to exercise this ability. Additionally, FFA has given me an outlet to serve. My freshman year of high school, I would have never volunteered to head a group project for a class, let alone present to one. Now, in my freshman year of college, I am consistently the student that finds new ways to engage classmates in content, or present an idea or ask a question. My past leadership experiences in FFA have enabled a newfound sense of courage and capability to lead in any scenario. In so many capacities, this organization is truly living out the last line of our motto, living to serve. I've personally been able to apply my leadership abilities while advocating for agriculture, serving my community, and fulfilling the role of assisting those in Kansas to find how they're living to serve. Throughout this slightly chaotic and historic time, the impact has been immense and long-lasting. In FFA specifically, events have been moved virtual and opportunities have been made to establish some kind of time for members to socialize at a distance. However, no matter what has happened or continues to happen during these times, we consistently remind ourselves and live by a new mindset that while the method has changed, our mission stays the same. We have learned how to operate Zoom, deliver virtual conferences, present workshops through a screen, but most importantly, We have learned the value of our time together and intentional actions. This past year has been different, to say the least. However, the greatest experience is being able to use our leadership abilities to transform unique challenges into opportunities for members. With how much I have utilized my leadership and skills from FFA, I am confident that I am forever impacted by this organization. And pandemic or not, I believe in the future of agriculture, and I believe in the future of our students. Thank you.
Thank you, Elizabeth. Next, join me in welcoming Joseph Lee from Pittsburgh High School, representing the students of HOSA.
Thank you, Mr. Smith. Good morning, everyone. My name is Joseph Lee. I'm a senior at Pittsburgh High School, also in Southeast Kansas. I'm humbled to be able to represent future health professionals in Kansas this morning and to serve the incredible organization as state president. During these challenging times, my awesome CTSO has gifted me with growth, and the most valuable takeaway from my time with HOSA is learning to learn in a position of leadership. Up until the beginning of junior year, I was new to the student organization. I had only attended 2 conferences, and when I put my hat in the ring for the state officer team, I learned that many of the candidates had been top competitors in their events for years, had experienced multiple international conferences, and had been involved with the organization since freshman year. Even after being elected to the team, I considered myself a HOSA baby. On the team, I found there were 2 veteran officers, one being the previous state president. We logged tens of hours on Zoom as the 2 coached me about the team dynamic, conference protocol, and taught me to maximize team productivity with committees, helping me to map a vision for 2021. Through the team's efforts and my developing leadership skills, we were able to build an interactive virtual fall leadership conference for 150 members across Kansas. Kansas HOSA produced its first ever newsletter, and we discovered the power of film to create promotional videos. Though my nameplate reads state president, HOSA taught me that a leader's purpose is not to simply achieve a rank in order to command others. I learned that it is my duty to thoroughly educate myself in order to become an even greater public servant. I started to see the value in taking time to learn. I applied this principle to help myself in other roles of service, like with my editorship with the school newspaper and in the National Honor Society. Coronavirus brought with it the challenges of coaching a journalism staff with frequent quarantines. Many NHS community service projects were ultimately canceled, and finding ways to substitute for the vacancies was uneasy. I encouraged myself to take a large step back, absorb as much new information as I could, and attacked my tasks with new knowledge, much like I have been doing with HOSA. In the end, my insight helped my newspaper staff produce an entire newspaper in the first semester. The NHS sewed homemade masks for the district and served at the local food bank. HOSA taught me that regardless of what the circumstances may be, good work can always be done. The Board of Education's continued support for CTSOs has allowed me to grow as a leader, but more importantly, young aspiring health professionals in secondary education can continue to access the pipeline to health professions despite the world's current challenges. Thanks to Kansas HOSA, I will be leaving my community with a fundamental lesson that I must learn in order to lead and lead in order to learn. Thank you for your time.
Thank you, Joseph. Next, we welcome Allie Broadbeck from Winfield High School, representing the students of Skillsusa.
Thank you. Good morning. My name is Allie Broadbeck. I am a senior at Winfield High School, enrolled in the Engineering Technology Design program. I am a 3-year Skillsusa State Officer. Last year, I was the president, and this year I have the tremendous opportunity to learn as a Skillsusa State Parliamentarian. As I've been a state officer, I've attended many conferences, competed, and given my own workshops. However, when the world entered a global pandemic in March, everything changed. No longer could I meet face-to-face, shake my members' hands, and congratulate them. Now we had to meet over Zoom or Google Meets, and my knowledge of those things were very little. I now had to learn how to operate Zoom rooms. How could I manage the chat, reactions, and member engagement, although we were miles away from one another. That was at the state level. In addition to being a state officer, I'm still a SkillsUSA local chapter member. And that means I have my own championship team, my own chapter, and we still have to meet. So we learned Google Meet, which has similar but different functions and was still stressful because we couldn't meet in person and support each other as we figured out what on earth virtual learning looked like. As I've been to many different workshops or learning experiences, I've learned the value of being a good team member, how to facilitate a workshop, how to give a good speech, and even communicate effectively. But the most important thing I've learned is about the SkillsUSA framework. The SkillsUSA framework was developed by business and industry members who wanted people entering the workforce to be better equipped to lead and learn. They came to SkillsUSA and they said, we can teach them the skills they need to do their job, but we need them to have the soft skills, showing up on time, personal integrity, responsibility, and self-motivation. As a student who thrived being in person, going virtual was very hard. I no longer had my teachers, classmates, and friends to support and encourage me to get to class on time, do my work, and then praise me when I do well on tests, or even do well on my assignments. Now I had to manage my own time, adhere to a strict schedule that was hard. I started a new job and found myself struggling to keep up with everything I had going on, even in a virtual world. With SkillsUSA, I knew how to use my adaptability and flexibility, how to have my own self-motivation, being I wanted to do well in these classes and use them later on in my life. And most importantly, I use the communication I had learned in SkillsUSA to tell my teachers, I am struggling, I don't know what to do, and I need your help to do better. And they were able to help me to learn and thrive in a virtual world. Throughout this, we've had to adapt. We no longer can shake your hand or say hello, but we can promote SkillsUSA through Instagram and Facebook using different Meet the Officer tools, or promoting workshops. Now we get to connect with our advisors through email, or most importantly, the SkillsUSA Connect platform. This was developed specifically for SkillsUSA members so we could meet with one another and stay connected even when we were millions of miles apart. This summer, I was a national officer candidate, and while I didn't get to meet in person in Louisville, Kentucky, I used these platforms, Instagram, Facebook, Gmail, and Connect, to meet with people around the nation. While I was not elected a national officer, I learned so many things about social media, Zoom, and other platforms so that I can now better serve SkillsUSA Kansas. Thank you for everything you've done, Board of Education. I appreciate it.
Thank you, Allie. Well, last and certainly not the least, you might say our final speaker is, we were saving the best for the last, but Abby Otten from Basehor-Linwood High School represents the students of the Technology Student Association. And good morning, Abby.
Good morning. As he said, my name is Abby Otten. I'm a junior at Basehor-Linwood High School, and I am also the president of Kansas TSA. Technology Student Association strives for all of its members to learn leadership and teamwork skills. However, this year has been a bit unique. We have had many issues to conquer this year, including adjusting to all of the changes, strengthening our work ethic, and continuing to lead our teams to victory. This year, our plans change week to week due to the pandemic. We never know what decisions that are made today will stay in effect for tomorrow. However, in TSA, we do have the ability to adapt because we have to be ready for schedule changes in our TSA world, especially when we go to conferences and we meet up with other chapters or team members to work on projects outside of our meetings. Also in TSA, we have to have the ability to have a strong work ethic, not only to get our projects done before our competitions, but also finish our schoolwork on time. With most of the events getting canceled and school moving to mostly virtual platforms, there has been a decline in motivation with many students and more individualized projects. This could be challenging for other students to continue to complete their work, but I have seen in my TSA chapter continue to use the work ethic learned at TSA as we carry on through this pandemic. As the president of the BLHS chapter and a strong leader in many of my groups, I have had to become more creative in planning meetings and keeping everyone actively engaged through this different year. Our officer team and I have been able to keep a strong core group, but it is very difficult to expand this year. Although this year has been hard on all of us, I have seen many of my TSA members take charge and use the leadership skills that we have learned in TSA to push themselves and others to learn more about the world around us. Thank you so much for this opportunity. I have enjoyed speaking with you for these past, this year, and I got to talk with you last year as well. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Abby. And a thank you to all of the presidents for your words today and your actions throughout this school year as you have served your respective organizations through a truly challenging and unique period. Chair Porter, members of the Board of Education, we stand for questions.
Thank you, Mike, Maya, Kaylee, Emily, Elizabeth, Joseph, Allie, and Abby. We thank you so much. Each year I look forward to this opportunity to visit with students. And one of you, I believe it was Elizabeth, talked about having confidence in the future, basically based on the response of students. I want to expand on that. I have confidence in the future because of people like you, because we are going to turn over the leadership to those of you with the skills that you have displayed today. And I want to strongly commend you and appreciate your leadership and urge each one of you to continue in a leadership role, because we need people like you making decisions for us as we move forward. At this point, I'm sure that there are numerous questions and comments, and I'm going to open that up for the members of the board to ask questions. Betty.
Good morning, and it was really a pleasure listening to you all. The one thing, though, that did stand out as you were speaking, and I will take pride in response from any and all of you, being such excellent students, you acknowledged challenges of the changes that we had to make. Would there be any recommendations that you can think of that would help those students that are not as skilled and focused as you are to navigate through learning online?
And anybody can answer.
Yes, I answer. So for my school personally, we've been in person most of this time, but I am a tutor for a student that is virtually. And she is going through all of her classes self-paced. And so a recommendation I would have is to have two students connect with each other to keep each other motivated, as well as just overall help in assignments.
I'll go next. As a student in a world where my school has been in-person, virtual, back and forth, my recommendation is to stay in contact with your teachers and your friends. I struggled with the anxiety of not knowing what was going to happen. Last Monday, my board decided we get to go back in person, and I'm thrilled, but I'm still so anxious about what's going to happen. Will I stay in person? Will I go virtual? Will I get my things done? Will I be able to graduate? Will I have a normal graduation? However, being able to communicate and stay in contact with my teachers, they are able to assure me and say, Allie, it's going to be okay. Even if you don't, your teachers are here to support you and will help you with whatever you need, even if you're not in the building. And so just staying in contact with people who will support you.
I can go next. So I have been very fortunate this year. We started out hybrid, but so far since September in Walsall, we've been all in person. And I'm very lucky with that because Back in the spring, I struggled tremendously with online school. I just couldn't get really the whole like time management thing down. And, like everything was so stressed out and there was so much anxiety because people had no idea what was going on. But the number one thing that I can really say from a student leader in my school, I currently serve as a student council president here. And when we brought forth the idea of having a homecoming pep rally, it immediately got shut down. It got said, no, that's not happening. There's no way that we can make it work. But it took me about 30 minutes to really think about how to make it work and how we could have it outside if we social distance all of our students in the football stadium, because we don't have a lot of students. So I would say just really encouraging educators to come up with alternative ways instead of just shooting students down for these opportunities that they've been looking forward to for a lifetime, but really encouraging, trying to come up with, like anything else that we could do. We had an idea for a virtual pep rally. We had an idea for an in-person one inside the football stadium. We decided, like maybe if we can't get the whole student body there, then maybe we can just do the upperclassmen, because hopefully these younger classmen will have opportunities to do these things in the futures. My educators here have been really great supporting me and helping me come up with alternative ideas for the things that we're missing out on. But I know that across the state, not all schools and educators are like that. So I'd really say promoting that would help a lot.
Yeah, I can go next. As being a student who has never been in person this year, or we're in person for a very small amount of time, we're online for most of the school, and we're starting up hybrid on the 26th of January. It's been really hard, even for me, just because I'm a very social person. I really like to speak with people. That's why I really ran for Business Professionals of America. I just love talking to people and getting to meet people from around the state, or even seeing my friends every day, talking to my teachers. So what I would recommend for the organization skills of students who may not be like our other CTSO presidents and being very organized, is something as just as simple as a planner. I was never a handwritten planner guy, but this year I've definitely taken that up, and that's been very helpful to me. Just staying organized, and like they said, time factor is very interesting. Not having set classes, or certain classes go longer because teachers have more planned and it's a certain class. So I definitely think the planner has been really helpful for me. And then also speaking to the Board of Education, China Mission School District Board, we've had a lot of our things shot down. Working with Student Council, we've been able to have certain things like our drive-through Halloween Carnival, which is usually an event for over 1,000 elementary school kids that feed into our high school this year. And we're able to have a drive-through, a much smaller version of that. And that was after 4 proposals submitted, because they just didn't really want to work with us. So I would suggest, just like Kaylee said, just keep submitting, just keep working, and you'll finally get through there. And I just love seeing all the smiles from parents and little kids who have really suffered through all this, missing a lot of it. It was really great. It warmed my heart being the chairman of it. And it was just a really great thing, having such a hard time. And I really suggest keep trying, just keep submitting, working with your teachers. Like Ali said, it'll be okay, even though it's a lot harder to get stuff done. Thank you.
I can go next. So I kind of want to branch off of what Mike and Maya said. I've been in person since the beginning of the semester, but because of close contact mandates, I've had to be quarantined for 3 different times. And so being isolated from my peers for 2 weeks at a time, 3 different times throughout the semester, even though I wasn't fully an online learner, I kind of experienced the loneliness and the mental drain that comes with learning online. My suggestion would be to connect students with their peers. This is something Maya said, but it's really hard to fully integrate online learners into the classroom. Even the most considerate and really well-teaching teachers at my school, AP teachers, advanced courses, educators like that, they're not even able to fully integrate students into what's happening in the classroom, because it's just impossible with half of the kids on a computer and half sitting in the room with you lecturing to them. So my 2 suggestions would be to build a buddying system, like what Maya mentioned, where you have a couple peers check in with an online learner frequently throughout the semester, whether it be through reports that you submit to the administration or anything like that, anything that connects a student to make them feel more, or I guess less lonely while they're online would be helpful. Another thing would be finding ways, I don't know the specifics of what this could be, but finding ways to make sure online kids feel like they are having a as close as possible similar learning experience to the kids inside the classroom. Me personally, in AP classes, I know discussions are a big thing where we students are very motivated to talk amongst each other about our readings or our assignments. But, even in today's meeting, the challenges of who's going to talk first, cuts or audio cuts in the sound through Zoom, it just makes it impossible for kids online to fully participate.
At this time, I want to give other board members an opportunity to ask questions. We appreciate all that, but I want to give other board members an opportunity. Everybody doesn't have to answer everything, but you can if you want to. Are there other questions from board members? I can't. Oh, Ben.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Thank you for joining us. I want to echo the chairman's sentiments. I was really excited this year. One of the bummers is this is the first year I'd actually be able to attend your guys' luncheon, because it's also the same time that we celebrate the superintendent of the year. And that banquet, and it's come from my district the last 2 years. And so this year was not. So I was looking forward to it, but I'm able to visit with a lot of the organizations and especially work with FFA and Skillsusa. But I'm very excited for the future of the state. We have a wonderful group of leaders here. You guys are very eloquent, to the point, and represent Kansas very well. And you've done all your organizations proud today. Excuse me. And I appreciate it. Very heartfelt messages sent. So thank you for joining us, taking time. You guys got out of school today, unless you're attending online, then I guess it's not that big of a deal. But I look classes a little bit today. So thank you for joining us. I really appreciate all the insight. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Jim, you're muted.
Michelle and then Janet.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Thank you, students, for being here today and all your wisdom and advice. Lots of great things were said today. And I think I was hoping a lot of people were listening today, especially other students. Very encouraging words from you all. Also, I'm going to miss you guys today. I love those breakout sessions. The new members would have really enjoyed that. Not just the luncheon and sitting at the different tables, but the breakout sessions afterwards. I truly enjoy those because it's interesting to hear from other students from across the state about some of the smaller schools, some of the larger schools, just different places where you come from. So I'm going to miss that, and I just want to say I'm so glad at least we were able to be here on Zoom today, and thank you for coming and attending.
Janet.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. First of all, you guys did an amazing job. Thank you so much. This is probably one of my bigger disappointments about this mess we're in right now, is that we aren't able to meet with you personally, because I really enjoyed having lunch and visiting with everyone, and I thought it was exciting. But I do have a question I'd like to ask, and everyone doesn't have to answer it. But I've been told that we're going to learn a lot during this crisis, and we're going to learn, we're going to change education, because there's going to be some things that have really worked quite well, and some things we found out, no, not so well. So I'd like to hear if any of you have any thoughts of things that have really worked quite well that you think maybe we need to keep. Thank you.
I can go ahead.
Yes. Oh, sorry. Personally, for me, I have really learned that some classes, I am an amazing student at doing self-paced, and I learn way more at self-paced in some classes than others.
I think, Elizabeth, you were going to be next.
Thank you. Yeah, I, as a university student now at Kansas State, I don't know how much this can apply to high school students, if any teachers are using that right now, or if they can use this. But in some of my courses, since we've had to do everything hybrid, where students, there's some in person and there's some online, and there always needs to be an option for students to join via Zoom. Those classes have been recorded, and those lectures are then posted to our classroom setting on our Blackboard or whatever format schools may use. And that's really been helpful for me as a freshman in college to be able to go back and watch those lectures, study them for different tests or exams. And also if I've ever had to miss one of those days for something with my CTSO, if I'm traveling to a chapter in the state, those teachers are much more able to be flexible because those lectures are recorded and there's not a lot of extra effort that has to be put in to make that up. So I would definitely encourage for that to stay something after the pandemic. If we're able to keep anything, to keep recorded lectures, keep recorded things documented so that students can look back at those and have them for review.
Emily, were you getting ready to say something?
Yes, thank you. Personally, for me, I had a problem where I had to miss a lot of school whenever we were online and transferring back into person. So it was really helpful for me to still be able to Zoom into that class, even though I wasn't quarantined or even though I wasn't in COVID. So whenever people have those missed opportunities, I don't want them to be able to not get the education they deserve because they're going through a hardship. And that really helped me to still be able to have that great education, even though I was going through a difficult time.
So personally for my school, before March, we did not have our own laptops that were assigned to us by the school. And we never really used like Google Classroom or any platform like that before the pandemic. And so when we moved out of school, we had to rush out computers. Teachers and students had to learn a new virtual format, and it was a kind of a mess there for like a week or two. But now as we transition into the new school year, everybody has their own assigned laptops and every teacher uses Google Classroom. So that has really made things more efficient for my school. And I definitely think the 1-to-1 technology ratio is going to be really important for the future, especially with technology continuing to grow.
Thank you. Our time has expired, but this is more important than what we're going to do next. So if there's anybody else that has a question, Dina, and this will be our last question, but and then you'll be off a hook after you get through listening to me.
Well, talking about technology, I wondered how many of you knew of, perhaps it hasn't affected you personally, but are there students in your school who have had difficulty with learning because of the lack of the opportunity to get on a reliable internet source?
So,
yes, I can speak to that.
First of all, everybody that's had difficulty at some point with internet, raise your hand. That's a bunch, Dina. Now, does any, Kaylee, I believe your hand was up first. Did you want to say something?
Yes, so I don't know if any of you guys know where Wellsville's at or have been to Wellsville, but it is a very rural community. And so internet difficulties happen all the time here. And I have no idea how the virtual students do it because there's cutouts on Zoom all the time. Some of our lower income families can't afford to have internet. So our schools really had to push out hotspots for those type of families. But personally, I know that there's one girl in my class that always has internet connectivity issues. And so it's really hard for her to get on the Zoom classes, and her grades declined because of that. But luckily the teachers have been able to, work with these students who have internet issues. But there's internet issues all the time here, which is why I have an extra hotspot just in case if the internet went out today. But definitely a struggle for anyone and everyone.
I thought I might hear that.
Joseph and then Emily.
Ms. Dina, to answer your question, my district has been fortunate enough to have some resources available for students. So earlier in March, we went to a 1-to-1 format with Chromebooks for each kid in the district, but also through the CARES Act, my district went ahead and purchased a contract with the local Wi-Fi service in town. So now we have a Wi-Fi connection available to every single student throughout the entire city. And I know that's not something that's available for every community, but looking into using government funding from the federal level to kind of amp up resources for even secondary education or middle school education is definitely something that I think rural districts and other places without these resources should look into. Additionally, I think I agree with Kaylee in saying that there will always be connectivity issues, but anything that can be done to kind of improve access to technology in laptops is definitely helpful for as long as we have to stay online with coronavirus.
Okay, Emily?
Thank you. Just to add on to that, my district I'm very grateful for them because with the connectivity issues, we are able to go into school even when not when we were in government shutdown. But if you didn't have that Wi-Fi, you were able to apply to go to school in school. Or even me, I live in town, but my mother is a teacher and my brother is also going to school and my father was working at home, and that bandwidth just didn't work for me. And so I started thinking about students out in the country, out where the Wi-Fi isn't as great. And as a school, we work together to find ways for students to meet at the library, for students to meet outside of the park where there was a hot spot for them. And I'm very grateful that my community came together for that.
Allie?
So my school went one-to-one in 8th grade, so 2017. However, since then, we've had connectivity issues in the building. When we went everybody virtual in March, we instantly had problems. First of all, my town is mainly one provider, and when the wind blows over 25 miles per hour, in teachers, everyone puts out a message, if you can't make it, we understand, because everybody starts dropping. It doesn't matter where you are in the town, the connectivity when the train comes is iffy. If you live outside of town, which many people do, your connectivity is iffy. I've been quarantined multiple times. My parents had COVID, and at that time we had 5 people all at home. My dad is an internet person. He works for networking, and that means he had to have direct internet at all times. His company was in charge of the power pole, so he had to have good internet. I have 2 sisters who also do class. Our connectivity was iffy. I could barely get on class meets. For CTSO meetings, it just was not going to happen. And things were such a struggle. We've put out hotspots, but we still every day there's a connectivity issue. Every day, 1 student at least, if not 5, drop out of the class. The teacher freezes. And so it's been a struggle trying to meet because you have to meet online and attend, but everything, we all have issues. Our Chromebooks don't work, or the connectivity just shuts down. When the entire town has 1 internet person, the internet goes out every other week, and it's a struggle.
Well, apparently, Dina, the answer to your question is yes, there are problems with that. Again, I want to thank you for being here. I want to make an observation. Several of you have talked about, you've made recommendations and they were immediately turned down. I work some with aspiring leaders, and my statement to them is you need to figure out a way so that the default answer is not yet, and it's not no. The no is the easy answer, but I think that the default should be how do we work this out so that we can make it work? How do we think creatively? Now, the reason I'm saying that now is because you are all obviously going to be leaders at some point. Well, you already are, but you're going to continue to be leaders. And whenever you are in those positions, I want you to remember what it felt like to be turned down, and use that as a way to look at how can I not make other people feel that way. And sometimes you're going to have to say no, but let that not be the default. But again, I want to thank you for being here on behalf of my colleagues in the State Board of Education. You are inspirational to us. And as several of them have mentioned, and I will mention again, we really enjoy meeting with you and would love to have had the opportunity to meet with you in person. However, that didn't work out this year for obvious reasons. But thank you so much. Stacy, anything else?
Thank you, Chair Porter, and thank you, members of the board.
Thank you very much, and have a wonderful rest of the school year.
Thank you, everyone.
Thank you.
Okay, just a moment. Okay, I'm not as sophisticated as the students are, so to look at an agenda and other things at the same time, I believe the announcement of the committee assignments is next. Is that right, Peggy? Okay, you are going to be as soon as we finish this part, you're going to get these. Peggy's going to send them to you. As I said yesterday, there were a lot of people that wanted to be on everything, and some people didn't want to be, didn't sign up for anything. However, we have responsibilities on a lot of different areas. So, everybody couldn't get everything they wanted, including me. We realized just this morning in a conversation that we have really underassigned Janet, and we should have given her everything, but we really have underassigned Janet. So if you're assigned something that you really don't want to do, then let us know. I've never wanted to do. Then we will stick it on Janet. But otherwise, I hope that you will accept it. And there will be, there'll be people that really wanted some assignments that they didn't get. Some people are going to get things that they really didn't sign up for. But I'm going to go over the list, and then I'm going to, then Peggy is going to send it to you. And we'll go for these are, first of all, committee and organizations where our board members are represented. Agriculture in the classroom, Ben Jones. Career and Virtual Education Advisory Council, Michelle. Confidence in Public Education, Janet. The Coordinating Council, Ann and Jean. The Education Commission of the States, Jim, the other Jim. I guess I'm the other Jim, so Jim. Kansas Alliance for Arts Education, Melanie. Kansas Association of Environmental Conservation, Melanie. Economic Education, Betty. Teacher Kansas of the Year, Dina. Kansas Learning Alliance, Michelle. Master Teacher Selection, Ben. Bargaining Team at the School for the Deaf, Michelle. Liaison to the Kansas School for the Blind, Melanie. School for the Deaf, Michelle. Professional Standards Board, Jean. School Mental Health Advisory Council, Jean. School Redesign, Betty and Ann. SEAC, Jim. Teacher Vacancy and Supply, Betty and Jean. I want to stop right here and specifically address the teacher vacancy and supply. And I don't want to say this when the students were here, but there is a missing CTSO, and that is Educators Rising. And I don't know what the barriers to Education Rising being, and that's the teacher, the Future Educational Professionals student organization. There are some kind of barriers to that being approved. And I think that I would like for the Teacher Vacancy and Supply Committee to discuss that and see what we can do. Because if we are going to look for people to fill the many vacancies we're going to have in the education community, we're in our schools to address that. Okay, that's the end of that sermon. I'll move on. Governor's Council, Jim and Jim. Interstate Migrant, Jean. Career Technical Education, Ann. This Alliance for Educational Advocacy, automatic, the chair, and the Volunteer Commission, Ben. NASB General Affairs Committee, Jim. Public Education, Dina, and NASB Whole Child Study Group. And we'll need to, Peggy will need to send that to NASB so they'll know who they are, since at least two of them are changed. Short-term Attorney General's Juvenile Justice, Janet. Capital Improvement, me. Communications, Jim and Melanie. Vaping, Michelle. ESSA, Ann. Fire Marshal, me. Kansas Opioid, Dina, Legislative Broadband Committee, Student Voice, Ann, Betty, and Melanie, and Ann, you'll chair that. And then the transition work group, and then the officers are listed below, and then a compilation of everything that shows that Janet is underrepresented down at the bottom. So those will be sent to you, and they'll be sent to the organizations so that you can be invited to meetings. And I think, Gene, I think there's a meeting either next week or the week after that, and I'll make sure that I'll visit with you about what's coming up on that before that time. Okay, that should be sent to you by now. Appreciate everybody's willingness to be active, and we will move on from there. I believe our next item is our annual report from SEAC. And I will introduce Bert Moore. Bert was one of the first people I met when I came to Kansas in 2002, and he is legendary as one that with expertise in special education and has a passion for making sure that each student has every possible opportunity to be successful, and I appreciate that. And then several years ago, on a committee that we were on a committee together, I met their chairman, Heath Piney, who has equal amount of both skill and passion, and we appreciate their leadership. And I believe I'm supposed to introduce you, Bert, so go ahead.
Thank you, Jim. We have several people with us today to visit with the State Board, and I want to thank the State Board for giving us this opportunity to update you on the Special Education Advisory Council's annual report for 2019-2020. We have Jennifer King with us. She is the chair-elect of Special Ed Advisory Council. Heath Piney. Rebecca Helgett was supposed to be with us today, but she's ill today, so we're going to fill in the gaps for her. So what we have for you today is information that we'll be sharing, and Pat Bone, I don't want to leave Pat out. She's the most important person here as far as I'm concerned, because she runs the Zoom for us. And Pat's going to put a Zoom up for us so that we can, or I'm sorry, a PowerPoint, so that we can go through and provide you with that update that we stand as we begin this presentation is that we have 6 main targets within Special Education Advisory Council. They were in your board packet. And you have that copy, and we sent that to you, but truly we are here to advise the state and the state board on unmet needs within the state of the education of students with disabilities. And we also include gifted students. So often you'll see the term exceptionalities because our state requires IEPs for students with giftedness. So when you see the word exceptionality, it includes students with disabilities and students with giftedness. Our second area that we advise in is to comment publicly on any rules and regs proposed by the state that relate to educating students with disabilities or exceptionality, or information provided to the state. And we look at that data, and again, we provide that information to the state board as well from time to time. We develop corrective action plans to address any federal monitoring, and we will be monitored by the federal government beginning next year in a 3-year process. So we're going to have some work to do there as well. We develop and implement policies and coordination of services for children and youth with exceptionalities. And we advise on the education of eligible students with disabilities convicted as adults and incarcerated in adult prisons. So at this point in time, I'd like to turn it over to Heath Piney, the current chair of the Special Ed Advisory Council, and he will run you through our presentation before questions and answers.
Good morning, everyone. It's nice to meet those of you that I have not met previously in these committees and other responsibilities. Pat, if you could put the presentation back up on the SEAC member represent slide, I think that's where we're at right now. Oh, if you've got any tech issues. Well, I think you guys can you see that part okay where we're at? Or Pat, if at the top you could hit the slideshow tab and then present from current slide, you'd probably be okay, as long as you're on the right screen. One more to the left, present from current slide. Left. There you go. That one should work. Unless you've got two screens and you've got it on a different screen. We can work with this though if everybody can see it okay. There's a way to fix that, but we'll just go. All right, so the SEAC membership is the backgrounds or the positions currently held, or the experience of the membership is actually outlined in law. And this slide describes the diversity that's required to be on SEAC. And as you can see, it's a wide amount of diversity. There has to be people from many different backgrounds that the legislature regarding special education. So it's not just the view of any type of educator. There are parents of students with disability, children with disabilities. There are individuals with disabilities, people from public schools, private schools, other state agencies. There's a large mix in SEAC. And really just getting everybody that has the right experience can be a bit of a challenge. And just to preview some of what I might talk about in a minute because it relates to membership, we've recently made some changes to have a committee that actually can go out and work to get some of this done, because it's hard to find people who want to serve, that have time to serve with this variety of backgrounds. We're working for along with the required members, we also have 4 ex officio representatives, because over time SEAC has realized that we needed to have their voice on the committee. They're not part of the legal requirement, so they're not voting members, but they're extremely valuable. Those positions are on the state. So for example, the last several years, we've had Jim McNeese join us, which has been extremely valuable to give that perspective that he brings to the table to our council. And I think it also is very beneficial that he gets to hear directly what we're doing. And one of the suggestions he's recently made is that we give you a quarterly update, which I believe is very beneficial, so you have an idea of what we're really working on. So we've got several ex officios on there that really increase the voice. Next slide, Pat. So with our annual report, although we're doing quarterly reports, we have an annual report that sums up what we've been doing. So during the 1920 school year, Rebecca Helgett was our chair, and these are a list of some of the things that we worked on. As you know, personnel shortages is always an issue with us, and that's something that we frequently talk about and work on. We've discussed, as KSD was discussing, we've talked about it for special ed, the use of ACT as a potential state assessment. And last year, you can see some of the items on there. It was a normal year until our last meeting. Around March, things went in a different direction when we moved into a pandemic health crisis. And our last meeting of the year actually occurs in April. And during April, we did review parts of and during its development, some members gave input on the continuous learning plan document. We did submit a letter to OSEP requesting flexibility in special education, because while we were in a different time and there were a lot of changes to learning models, where we're teaching from, buildings shut down, all of that going on, we're still required to follow federal law. There were no flexibilities or changes in the requirement to follow federal law. So we did make sure that we had our voices heard and had that ask, although it didn't change, and Betsy DeVos didn't elect to help us make those changes at the time. She felt it was good to hold steady with the laws as written. And then if you could go to the next slide, we have several discussions that are work in progress. These are discussions that started mostly this year, maybe some last year, that we're currently working on right now. One is administrative licensure, and this is involving the special education administrative license. That's something we're going to talk about later today. In the past, the way licensure was set up for administrators worked really well for gen ed. Probably didn't have any issues with people in general education moving from initial to professional with their building license at all. However, in special education, had many directors express, or coordinators or assistant directors, that they had a lot of difficulty moving from initial to professional. And it seemed like there's just some misalignment with how special education works. So that's something that we're working on. Additionally, there have been some proposals for a new special education director license. And we've had a lot of feedback from the Kansas Association of Special Education Administrators on the difficulties and the issues that that license would cause as written. So those are things we're looking at. Teacher licensure is another issue. And that's all about having the right people at the table, getting the right qualified staff. Just some problem solving and brainstorming on many ways that we can support the needs in the field. And I know the KSDE licensure department has done a lot of great work in that area. And they've come out with some alternative license methods, and it's been very helpful. And just in the mind of continuous improvement, we're looking at how we can improve that. Transition, something that I know some of you have heard from us. We're working on improving our transition services for students. So when they move away from public schools, they have a smooth transition, so parents know what's available, so parents know what to expect as they move forward. We've also went through some COVID issues and discussed them this year. And we have a future discussion on the technical assistance availability and adaptability. Because while Kansas TASN, the Technical Assistance System Network, is probably the best in the nation, we want to make sure that all districts have access to that. We want to make sure that it's meeting the needs out in the state to support our educators so we can support our students. Next slide, please, Pat. Future items that we believe are on the slate coming up. There are a lot of legislative considerations for the 2021 session. A lot of those are related to funding. Funding is a big issue for everybody right now because of COVID and those requirements. In addition to having potentially less students on the enrollment, our categorical aid, which is the money we receive from the state, is predicted to be lower next year than it's been since the 17-18 year. It is significantly lower than it was several years ago. And additionally, we've had some trouble getting Medicaid funding because of the new learning model. So a lot of special educators in districts, interlocals, and cooperatives are hurting for funding. And some of that new funding that comes in goes to districts. And it might be harder for some of those other folks to get that money. We also are going to look at some federal monitoring, keep providing you quarterly updates, and we will be working at setting targets for state performance. Next slide, please, Pat. Does anybody have any questions for either Bert, myself, or Jennifer over our annual report or just SEAC in general?
Are there questions? Ben.
I want to thank Bert and Heath for joining us. I know Pat's on here and Jennifer. The work you do is very important, and it was I enjoyed reading the report over the weekend. A very thorough report. I know it's riveting reading, right? But it's everything you do has a personal impact on somebody in the state of Kansas. A very personal impact. Sometimes more than what we do. And so I appreciate the time that everybody takes to be part of SEAC. I missed a breakfast this morning that we typically have with SEAC, like we normally do, but you guys do amazing work, and to hear the licensure things and the teaching things, and that's something that I think some others on this board can deal with. I'm not in a position to make any suggestions, I guess. But to coordinate maybe with our teacher vacancy and SEAC a little bit, some crossover, but I'm not in a position to do any of that. I'll let the chair deal with that. But it was a very well report, and I thank you again for all the work that you guys do. It's always a touchy subject with everybody, and we appreciate all the work. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Thank you.
Jim McNeese.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I want to say to Bert and to Heath, you guys have done a great job this past year in leadership. And SEAC is functioning at a much higher level than they were several years ago. Regrettably, their strength of work ethic and dedication are going to be challenged this year. The funding issues that they mentioned are real. They're going to have an impact on students directly, and those students that deserve the best we can provide for them, as all students do. We're going to have to work hard to ensure that we're providing the services that are required and needed. And that's going to be a challenge this year. But thank you for your leadership, to both of you and to SEAC itself. They're a dedicated group who are eager to speak up and hard to please. So thank you.
Ann.
Thank you, Mr. Chair, and thank you, Bert and Heath and the whole team there for all that you do. You know, I was kind of surprised that even though, you know, counties might have been in the red, or however you want to describe it, that more school districts didn't bring in small groups of special ed students rather than making them go remote. Have you guys discussed that or talked to districts about how to do this better in a pandemic world?
You know, we have had that discussion, and on the agenda, one of the times we had that discussion, you saw on the slides that talked about the gating criteria. As it turns out, there were special education directors who were struggling to help other district administrators understand that was a possibility because their board had voted to be remote. And, you know, we know that the law says we can't deny FAPE to students, and we need to bring in some students who need that, but some didn't feel like they were following their gating criteria. So the KSDE gating criteria has a little asterisk on it now, and down at the bottom, it talks about how we can bring in some students when that's what they need. And after that was added by KSDE, I actually was contacted by 2 or 3 different directors that said, thank you, that really helps me have these conversations. And it's just, there's so much going on. It's easy to have some miscommunication. So we have talked about how some students need that and how we can support some districts to help that happen.
Yeah,
Does that answer
maybe
your
we just
question?
didn't make that clear enough because I think so. Yeah, maybe we just didn't make it clear enough that it was always where you could have groups of 10 or less of any kind, you know. So lesson learned on that one. Thank you.
And Ann, I might
You guys were
share.
very clear. I'll say that. I mean, your information was clear. You said it many times. I've heard Dr. Watson say it many times, but sometimes that message with everything else just got lost.
Bert?
That's what I was going to share, is that Dr. Watson on the superintendent Zooms, which by the way also included directors of special education, Heath had reached out and asked if directors could be on those calls, and directors were added. And he did tell them that they could bring small groups in. It was clear in the continuous learning plan that they could, but for some reason or other, they just felt limited, fearful perhaps. Maybe the staff were reacting to the opportunity to have to come in when other staff weren't. We don't know specifically because of local control, but we made it very clear when we amended the document to include the asterisk that said that districts could bring small groups of students in if it was in the best interest of the student.
Yeah, I know Dr. Watson was telling them all the time. And if the other board members are like me, I was sending notes to superintendents going, you know, you can bring in small groups, and some did. So anyway, moving forward and hoping we're do better this semester. Thank you guys.
That was information we needed to know. Thank you, Ann, for asking the question. And thanks for the response. Are there other questions?
Mr. Chair, if I might, I'll say it again.
Yes, sir.
You should bring small groups of students in, even if you're in red and in remote, whether they're special ed or not. Students that need assistance, especially special ed students, should always have the availability to have their IEPs met. So I will continue to say it, and nothing like, you know, if you only had one hit back in 1967, you play it every time you go out with the people. So I will try to do my best, but we need to keep people safe, but we need to help those kids that need us.
Okay. Dina.
Well, we say things, but other people say, well, I've heard something different. So is it in writing somewhere that these folks can take it and say, here it is, this is the directory or directive from KSD or whoever they need to reference? So I'm hopeful that it was available, but I do know that there were some in my area who didn't provide those kinds of opportunities for students, and parents were hiring tutors. So that to me was inappropriate from that point of view, that they needed to feel like they needed to hire someone to take the position of a teacher that was being provided to that student. So anyway.
It is in Navigating Change. I know Bert has also distributed more subsections of that on the special ed side, but it doesn't have to even be a special needs kid. It could be a student with a 504. It could be a student that's severely social, emotionally, or academically behind. But what you're going to have to do is, of course, keep them spread out with, keep enough spacing and keep people safe. But it can be done. And I will tell you, in the vast majority of schools, it's being done. So I think it was Bert asking me earlier this week, or I was asked this week, or said, hey, someone said X, which was 180 degrees. I'm sorry, it was KDHE that actually asked me. Did you say that it was entirely 180 degrees, but not only myself, but we've been saying since day one. So I will say this, the vast majority of school districts have been bringing special needs kids and kids that are severely behind in, and have been doing so for a long time. But we'll continue to say it every time we can. We have a Zoom meeting tomorrow, Thursday. We'll say it again. Bert will remind me.
Thank you.
Anything else?
And I know you have, and I know it's available to more students than just special ed, but that has been a concern from parents that I've heard of. Thank you.
Thank you. Janet.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I've heard a lot of the same concerns that have been expressed here about special ed children being impacted more than anyone during this pandemic. But I guess I want to ask you the same question that I asked our students in Career Tech earlier. Have you learned anything positive from this pandemic that you think you will continue to implement in the future? Or no?
I've heard some people, I think it's Professor John Hattie, which has written a lot of books and articles. He talked about this as being one of the greatest educational experiments of all time. I mean, if you wanted to, you could never say, hey, we're going to try this and see what works. We're going to do an experiment. We're going to send everybody home and see what happens. But we were forced to do that. And when we did that, we've definitely learned about some things that were positive and some things that were negative. So yeah, right now there are many special education students that are learning from home, and they're receiving their services, they're getting what they need. Others are inside, but we've learned how to be more efficient. We've learned some new ways of teaching. Distance learning itself, actually in research, isn't negative. So you can do just as well, because what really works in instruction, the most powerful instructional methods are possible either in person or online. So maybe we got rid of some of the fluff that wasn't really powerful, and we stuck to what is powerful. So it's been a learning experience. I think we're still learning. We're still seeing what works and what doesn't work, but we'll definitely find some good things that we can pull from this and use in the future when we go back to more on-site learning.
Thank you.
Michelle.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Yeah, Heath, you just brought up some good things as far as, people are still receiving their services. As far as like changing, a lot of times it's just redirection of behavior. How has that worked for online and then there's someone on the other line? Are they able to work with the family better to help them maybe redirect that behavior so that they can learn some of those tactics at home? Do you think that that's maybe been more beneficial rather than they learn it at school, but then they go home and then the parent doesn't really know how to adapt to that? They've just been told that this is what we've been doing at school, but maybe they're learning a way to do that. Have you have you learned any of that throughout the process? Because a lot of it is redirection of behavior with some of the children, and those professionals are doing that at school, but then the parents aren't learning how to work with that or do that at home. I just wondered if that was something that was good that came out of this. Thank you.
Those, are great questions and great points, because some of just the are you there and responding are the big questions. I talked to a coach the other day that was talking to a teacher having trouble. We talked about the different types of engagement, how to improve it. But looking at the more behavior, I've heard of a lot of people doing things throughout the state, and I can't always speak to everybody else, but I can tell you what we've done. When we've went to at the beginning of the year, and then when learning models changed, when later in the year, we had parent universities where they were recorded, but they were also live, where parents could come in and learn and gain ideas, learn how to use the technology, get 101. We also had sites set up throughout the school districts where parents could come in and get support. Additionally, we have a behavior hotline. So if a parent is struggling with behaviors, they can call in and talk to an expert in behavior and have them talk through some of those items with them. Just individually in special education, IEP teams could do this too. So yes, if a student is struggling with their behavior at home, our teams would be available to have those discussions with parents on how they can be supported, much like they would be in school. So that's that's a lot of different routes for regular ed and special ed to receive that kind of support.
Great, thank you.
I might also add, Michelle, that a related service that many people are not aware of is parent training. So that can be added into an IEP to where parent training is part of the IEP process. And often with a child that's experiencing significant behaviors, that is something that the school needs to be accountable to work with that parent to provide that continuity between the school and home and how that parent can work with their child.
Great, thank you.
Thank you. I want to make two observations. First of all, in your presentation, you talked about interest in legislation. I want to emphasize that Dina and Ben are our legislative liaisons. And anytime that you have concerns, would you please make sure they're in the loop? We need to make sure that if we are communicating with the legislature, which likely will be a challenge, that we're on the same page and working together to do that. And there's a possibility otherwise that we may be inconsistent in the loop and are probably primary spokespeople for that. And I made this announcement yesterday. This deals with transition, and it's actually peripheral to, but what happens to students after they leave? And there is an issue of sub-minimum wage that makes it less likely or possible for people to be transitioned into things that are not very respectable positions. And so I don't know one of the, Laura Howard is the secretary of one of those alphabetical groups. And there's a group of us from the transition work group that are going to be meeting with her, advocating for the reduction or elimination of sub-minimum wage so that we can make sure that we're looking at people's abilities instead of their disabilities. And so that's an area that I'm sure you're interested in and would support. But that is a direct involvement of the transition work group, even though it is not directly the responsibility of the Department of Education or the Board of Education. it is an outgrowth of some of the other things that are going to be coming from the transition work group to other agencies. Anything else?
I might add,
Bert.
Chair Porter, what you just mentioned about transition, the Special Ed Advisory Council just adopted a document this morning that's going to be used to educate parents and students and also some of our school staff. And one of the things that's included in that document is the employment first language that says that we will not support sub-minimum wage or students moving into sheltered workshops. So I think having that document in your hands might be very helpful in any meetings that you're going to be attending related to the sub-minimum wage. And we'll make sure that the state board gets that document, and it was formally approved by a special advisory council. We want that to be in the hands of our families, of our schools, and of our gen ed teachers, our special ed teachers. We want to widely distribute it. So I just want to make that point. And my second point is teacher licensure and administrative licensure was brought up. I want the state board to understand that teacher licensure has been at the table with us. We've worked with Michelle Mill. We've worked with Susan Hilbert and Michelle, and we're trying to come up with solutions, and they've asked us to provide them with input on how they could support us. So I don't want you to think that TLA has not been at the table. They are working directly with us and have asked us for input on what we think should occur.
Thank you very much. We appreciate, first of all, it was only about 3 or 4 years ago that that SEAC that we requested a board member to be part of that, and that was widely accepted. And we appreciate the opportunity to have somebody at the table. Appreciate Jim's working in that area effectively. Thank you very much. Look forward to hearing more, and I think the quarterly update is a really good idea because we want to move forward as quickly as possible. Board members, we will reconvene at 10:45.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, the State Board of Education is called back to order. We are happy today to have with us Doug Meckel, Dr. Meckel from the KSB, who is going to make sure that we know everything we need to know about being an effective board in the next 45 minutes or maybe hours. Thank you, Doug. I want to set the bar pretty high there because I know you'll come through.
It's not often that someone moves me from an hour to 45 minutes with an indication that can you do it in 45. So I've been following you guys off and on the last couple of days, so I know you've already had a long series of meetings, and the last thing you wanted to do was have a board retreat with me involved. So I'd like to start by saying good morning to everyone, Chairman Porter, and new board members. And of course, some of you, we've been doing this, it seems like, for many years. I'm not saying any names, Mr. McNeese, but Janet. But anyway, I guess I did say a name. What I really wanted to do was to spend a little time with you talking about the board and obviously some team building. So I'm going to share my screen. When you have questions today, normally, if you remember, we like to break into groups and talk and share ideas and reflect together. It's very difficult to do that in this model. Breakout rooms aren't something that the board can do. So we're going to spend some time talking about things we can do together. We do have a chat area. If you have a question, please, Dr. Watson, if you see something come up in the chat, stop me and we will try to review it. So I'll get started and run as fast as I can. So this is about team building, and I know you're a board, but I want you to understand that a great board is also like a team. So to spend a little bit of time on the outcomes today, I want to try to give you some insights into best practices for successful boards, do some boardsmanship and some team building ideas, and then let you have a chance to, and all of you have at least a solid knowledge of education. You know, you always start with the outcomes. In this scenario, I want you to know there's a big difference between lecture, right? Someone's going to come lecture us versus someone who's going to give advice. And this is purely advice. These are things that make a difference for boards. And it's advice that I'm happy to share with you and answer questions as we go. So please remember, I'm not here to lecture you, do this, don't do this. I'm just going to give you some ideas of some things that do make for successful teams. This chart is basically what a governance system looks like as a board. And it's broken into 4 components, and I want to start at the very right-hand side. Student learning and success has to drive every decision you make. And I know that's what it says on the wall, but if we don't move it beyond just something that's on the wall, it becomes irrelevant. So your focus as leaders, is educational leaders for the state of Kansas, has to always evolve around what's best for student learning and success. So I'll talk about those components, sharing some of your work from your website. So it really is all about a successful high school graduate, the best in the nation, and the idea that we're going to ensure that each child is successful. Dr. Watson shares this constantly when he's out in the field. I heard him say he's going to make sure he repeats some things earlier from the special ed conversation. But what we want for our kids is we want them to be happy. That's that social emotional side. We want them to be fulfilled. We want them to be focused on things that matter to them. We want them to be able to give back to the community and be of service to others. And then, of course, all the skills they need to basically be successful in their future endeavors. Now, I say that because this is the language that resonates well with the people that we generally speak with. You've written it in a very more specific, more of the practitioner, scholarly manner here, but this is what defines success according to the state board. So you have some new board members, and obviously they're going to have some ownership in this process. This is what they've inherited. So as a new board member, now they have to embrace and have some ownership of this. So this is the scholarly terms that you referred to for what a successful high school graduate looks like. And this should be driving the decisions you make. Now, the student success monitors that we've continued to work on, and you're going to hear a lot from Dr. Watson about post-secondary success and what drives our decisions. But we do know that in our world right now, that the demand is high for people to have some level of post-secondary success. We know we're going to need some people who have to have bachelor's degrees because we've always had that. But we also know we have a large portion of our Kansans that need to have some level of certification or licensure that goes beyond a high school diploma. So with that in mind, I'm going to let you have a chance to ask any questions that you might have or address any insights you might have with your peer group as we move forward. So I'll give you a chance to type in the chat if you have something you'd like to share. Okay, it's a very quiet time. Anyone want to say anything into the group about our direction? Okay, I can take a hint. What you're telling me, can you get this over with? All right, I understand. All right, I'll progress to the next levels then.
Doug, I think
Doug,
Gene Clifford has.
Yeah.
Very good. Yes.
Well, it's probably easier to speak than to type this in. But one thing I think that we are missing, and that would lend to that 71%, is business and industry certifications that are not connected with community colleges or some type of academic institution. I think, the John Deere program would be connected with the community college. Sometimes it is, and sometimes it isn't. And I think there are other ones that are similar to that, we recognize certificates as being a post-secondary achievement. But I think we don't really focus on that. And I think in maybe urban areas, there are even more connected with the aviation industry or the tech industry in other areas. So I'd like to really incorporate more with our business and community partners.
Excellent. Members.
Also,
very good. Go ahead.
Doug, I'd like to reinforce what you said about ownership. If we can ever get together again, one of the first things we want to do is revisit our vision and goals, so that we can all be part of that discussion. As I said yesterday, that happened just as I got on the board. It was already in the process. Well, there's 6 people that have been elected since that time. And so that's an important thing to do. And by the way, you can have more than 45 minutes.
Well, I appreciate that. You say that now. You may not say that in 20 minutes. So I'm going to move you to the next portion. When we move beyond the critical measures of what you do, then the board has the next component. It's called the board responsibilities. And the board has basically, this comes from KeyWorks, as the national organization. The board has a responsibility to focus on the KeyWorks, which is vision, accountability, policy, community leadership, and relationships. And I'll go into a little more detail as we work through this. But that's what lets you focus on what you've determined the ingredients to creating a successful student in Kansas: kindergarten readiness, plans of study, graduation rates, post-secondary completion, and then of course that social emotional one, which we've all lived through a constant battle this year related to that. And I heard some of your discussions earlier. So let's talk about this component. And it starts with the vision, okay, is to determine what we focus on. That's the power of the board. And every question you have related to that goes back to, where does this align to our vision? The next level, of course, is the accountability. What are we doing related to academic standards, transparency? Are we focused to be world class? And the decision making, the community engagement, all that aligns to that accountability factor. You're often held to accountability on academic standards. You're on assessment standards. Certainly, you're going to hear some, I'm guessing, this spring about budget and resources. But accountability is a critical measure because that's what creates the trust with the people you serve in the state. Okay, when you're accountable and transparent, then the people trust the decisions that you make because they know you're making them for the right reasons. That third area is policy, and we tell school boards policy is your district law, and so you make decisions on what you want to do and then incorporate policies to make that happen. And so that's really the power of a governance board. What is our, matter of fact, the first question you should ask when someone picks up the phone and says, what do we should do in here? I've got a problem here, is, well, where does this fit into our policies? There's a reason policies exist. They're what drive the decisions we make, and it lets us serve the students that we basically are assigned to serve. The fourth area connects directly to the first three. You have to be the statewide conduits of advocacy for public education. You are the people that represent what we're trying to accomplish for every student in Kansas. And you do that by the relationships you build and the actions that you take. So this is a critical ingredient. You're the statewide leaders, the community led statewide model. And then of course, the last one is the relationships you have with the board and the commissioner as you work the process. We're going to spend a little bit of time on the roles and responsibilities, but really the board's job is to govern and to empower the commissioner to accomplish your vision. Okay, that's the commissioner and his agency's task. So how are we going to work together to make sure that that happens? So a couple other things to remember: that it all starts with your vision. These are the same. That's the same list in the actual scholarly terms, but this is what we want to make sure happens for our kids. So any questions on those 5 roles, and I'll make sure that you have access to this PowerPoint as we go through when we're done. If Peggy, I'll make sure Peggy can send this to you. Questions on those 5 capacities? Yes, Jean.
Sorry to keep asking, but I see those as part of ours, but really we have all these school boards and you know, I have over 500 school board members in my district alone. We don't have any meshing with them as much as we do with the districts and the administrators. And I just wonder if maybe our vision needs to incorporate some of the ideas that may come up from the districts, and for them to also understand what we're asking of schools. I don't know. I am just looking for more interconnection between our local boards and our board. And I suppose that's probably all incumbent on each of us to get to know those folks, but there's an awful lot of them, and it would be nice to be able to understand what they're looking at, what their issues are, because they may be a little bit different than what we understand through the district administrators' pipelines.
Jean, that is a great insight, and I'll try to answer that. You're referring to defined autonomy. We know each district has local control, but defined autonomy means that the goal is established, the vision is established by the state board, and then every board in the state of Kansas should be working towards accomplishing the state board's goals. They have the opportunity to do it within their system, but they should be every district should be focused on the same goals that you've indicated as a state board, every district. Now they're going to do it in different ways. You're not prescribing how they do it, but you're prescribing these are the things that they need to accomplish. But you're right, there is sometimes a gap between where we are locally versus where you are as a state goal. Obviously, if we're meeting those outcomes, then why would we need to worry about this? Well, the reality is we're not meeting those outcomes currently. And so we have to stay focused on this. So it has to drive us. Great insight. Dina?
Well, I agree with Jean's idea of bringing in the local boards to a greater extent. But when we're talking about that, we also need to embrace ideas that come from the people that are in touch with students on a daily basis, the teachers, because a lot of them feel a disconnect between, I mean, as a sub, going out and talking to the teachers, sometimes they're asking me, why are we doing this? And while we have teachers who are on committees who come up with these ideas, sometimes that doesn't get connected with the people who are actually in the trenches. So while we're looking at involving the boards, the local boards more, it seems to me that we also need to make certain that we're connecting with teachers as well.
Yeah, you're describing one of the gaps that always exists as you work through lines of communication from hierarchy. What the dilemma is, you don't represent necessarily hierarchy, but you have the highest authority in the state as an elected official serving Kansas students. That's your basic assignment, serving Kansas students. Now, how does that work through this? And the reality is, and Dr. Watson would tell you as he's toured the state, when local boards get to decide what they focus on, as long as they meet the outcomes, that's what it's going to look like. There's going to be gaps. Interestingly enough, you have authority, but the best authority is to lead through influence. Okay, to convince them this is what they want to do, not telling them you have to do this. The poorest way to get anyone to improve is compliance. Okay, that's a poor model. So what you have been doing as leaders is setting a vision for every child. Now, the rate of embracing that is going to vary from place to place. And you all have districts that in your district, you all have school districts within your that are working at the highest levels. And I'm guessing you may have a few that aren't where they need to be. I'll say that very politely. So how do we help them get there? What we do know, and we've tried this in the past at the federal level, that say you will get there or else, and when the or else meant what, right? I mean, it didn't change anything. So how do we move people forward by using influence? So I think your vision is a great tool to do that. How do we make sure that everyone understands? I work with lots of local boards, and goals are one of the first things we share with every district. But then again, sometimes we have to worry about the things that maybe aren't as important to us as it is to that local community. So something for you to think about. You know, I noticed you guys were talking about as I'm having some connectivity issues. So if you can still hear me, we'll see if there's any other questions.
I think Michelle has a question, Doug.
Oh, hi, Michelle.
Hi, good morning. Yeah, I guess, we learned a lot from the students this morning. Obviously, we're going to have to make some changes going forward with, we ask like what things worked, what things didn't work from the pandemic. I guess my biggest concern going forward in my district, we might have 89%. I think it was Dr. Watson that talked about 89%. I don't think it's 89. I don't know if it's 89% of the students or districts that are back in person, but we have a large majority of students that aren't back in person being educated. And so we have a lot of, we have a lot of students that we've lost that superintendents have said didn't sign up where they were here in May. They wouldn't have graduated. They should have come back to us. We don't know where they are, moved to another state. We just don't know where those students are. My biggest concern, you have to have, in order to have teachers, you have to have students. You have to have an audience. So my biggest concern going forward, and maybe we have to relook, we have to do a retreat or do some type of discussion is, as a public sector, how do we bring those students back? We have competition out there now more than ever. And we have students and parents that are very disgruntled with what's going on in their district, including my district. So I'm concerned about moving forward. How do we work with legislative legislation on, people want to talk about not moving public money out into the private sector. How do we move forward and bring these parents that are very upset with the way their child is either being educated or not being educated, bring them back into the public sector with trust and transparency. I know I've hearing a lot from people out there that, it's constant. I just saw an update right now. I'm going to have to answer to either publicly or in private emails about, they're not happy with the transparency, the misinformation, the thresholds coming out of the labs. There's so many questions that are not being answered. So I think going forward, we have to be honest, open, transparent, respond to these people that are going to these board meetings and only receiving 20 minutes of maybe a time when they want to speak publicly, and they want those people, those local boards to listen to them. So now they're coming to us, they're coming to me, and I want local control. And so I'm fighting things at the local level because it's easier to fight it there than it is at the state level. I'll tell you that, because a lot of these districts are already back in session and have been since August. Private schools, they're leaving in mass exodus to go to these private schools because they're open for business and have been since August. And I can throw a stone at a house that kids are being in person, and we interact with these kids and they're going to school. So I may be opening up a can of worms here, but I just want to make sure that we're transparent, and I don't want that local control to be taken away, but I also want people to parents to be able to go to their local boards and be listened to. So I don't know how we do that, and maybe that, I think a lot of it's communication. We just need to communicate better as a whole state and say, here's who you go to, here's their local control. These people are elected, we're elected. I guess I just want open communication, transparency, and how do we get these people to trust the public sector again and come back to these schools, because they're leaving and I don't know if they're going to come back. And I'm sad about that, because I like our public option where we live. I just wanted to have a choice and have my children back in school and in person, and that's not happening at this point. So, and I don't know that it's not. They say it's a safety thing, but I'm to the point where I don't know what to believe anymore. So I've probably said too much, but I think that the open transparency and communication, and Randy keeps going back to the superintendent saying, you got to get these people, it's by law, you got to get these kids back in school for the ones that need it. There's ones that are out there that, or whatever it takes, but we just have to be listening to those parents in those districts, I think. So thank you.
Yeah, I think you've identified some critical insights. How are we going to get them back? Well, if we're not open, honest, and transparent at any level, we're not going to get people involved in anything public. And that's period. The other insight is our system has to be so good. And I don't. The term system may not be ideal, but that's what we are. We're a system that's designed to serve. And if we don't do a better job of serving, you're right, we're not probably going to get people back. And so what are we going to do to make sure we have that our public education is so viable that people can't stay away from it? It's just so important, and we do such a good job. And that means we're going to have to change. There's no way around it. We're going to have to change. And And I heard the students earlier that some of the things they did worked well. Talk about working at my pace, being able to work when I was away from the building, dealing with other issues. So how do we blend all of the models to better meet the needs of each child? And I think that's going to be an ongoing challenge. I would add one caveat. Part of the dilemma, we've had a whole lot of angry people this year. COVID does that. The superintendents have dealt with a lot of angry people. School boards have dealt with a lot of angry people. Thank goodness most of you have not met any angry people, right? None of the people oh, okay. Yeah, everyone is angry because we have been thrown into a change scenario that we weren't very comfortable with yet. So we'll talk a little bit more about that as we go. Continue to ask questions. I appreciate your insights as we go. I think I can make this work. The next level, you move from the board responsibilities to the governance team itself. So now we're getting closer to actually what you do together. And this is the governance team when you're together at the board table or via the Zoom meeting. And there's basically 4 components to this as well. It begins with a unity of purpose, the role, the culture, and of course, the structures and processes that you use. So if the board can't align on their unity of purpose, it's going to be a constant tug of war. And all boards can go through this challenge if you're not careful. I think we should do this. I think we should do that. The best insight I can give you, and when we think about boards, you need to think about team. The teamwork is simply stated, it's less about me and more about we. And I don't know that I can say that enough. It's what we think, because your power lies vested together at that board table. As an individual, you're an elected official, but you have no power unless you're together working on the goals of the state. So table, they often they refer to in my opinion, or I think, and that's probably the wrong way to approach any time you're in a discussion as a board. What you want to do is reframe that. You want to ask in a form of what have we considered? Because when I hear from a person, I get data, but it's not highly reliable data. It's just an opinion. Okay, and it doesn't mean it's not a valid opinion, but what it means, it may be the only opinion that's like that. If you've ever walked away from a football game, you might have heard a parent gripe about a coach. Okay, that might have been the only person who was upset at that coach. Rarely, but it might have been. So that's an opinion, but it's not necessarily the data. So some of the things to remember about this unity of purpose is eliminate the me from the process. Okay, focus on what we should do as we move forward. Now, governance model, you have to oversee the entire state. The entire state. When I work with the board, you can see the entire district. You have to oversee the entire state. And that means from large suburban districts to large urban districts to very small burgs, very small school districts, and you have to oversee them all. So a simple reminder, the board's job is not to run the agency. That's not your job. The board's job is to ensure that it's run well. And you do that through your commissioner. You do that because the levers you have as a board is to say, what does the data tell us? Are we doing the things that we think will best meet the needs of each child? So that's that oversight responsibility. And this is the governance clock. And if you've ever been on a school board, I've probably shared this with you or a superintendent, because there's specific roles that you all play. Okay, and yours as a board is to establish the vision. Okay, and then adopt the policies to make that vision happen. Then that horizontal line determines the bottom of the clock, and that's where the commissioner's job kicks in. Okay, he and his team will develop the plan. You wanted to accomplish this. This is how we propose to do that. We'll implement them. We'll monitor them. We'll report back to you, and then you as a board get to evaluate: did it work? Okay, what was the progress we made? What does the data tell us? So the board's authority is really to decide what we do. And the transparency, Michelle, back to your point, is to be able to explain to everyone why. Because people will engage in something if they understand why you're doing it. Okay, if they don't understand why, then you're just telling them what to do. And of course, the commissioner's authority is, his job is to bring you the best recommendations possible. Here's how we think this would accomplish your vision. So your job is to set expectation, and Dr. Watson and his team is to decide how we accomplish that. And that line represents the communication, back to communications again. His team needs to be able to explain to you why they think this will make that happen. Okay. Your question is it working? Their question is, here's the data and here's why we think it will work. So that's that governance role, and the role of the board, and then the role of the leadership team within that board. So the last area related to before structure and process is culture, and the board culture. And I've been working with boards for a long time. The state board has its own set of cultures because you cover such a broad portion of the state, but there's a climate in which everyone sees what we are. And then there's the culture about what we really believe. So this is my favorite slide. This is the slide that determines the success of most organizations. Drucker says culture eats strategy for breakfast. And if we were in a small group, we'd be talking about what he means. On occasion, I have someone say, well, breakfast is the most important meal of the day. That's not what he means. Okay. What he really means is, if we don't get our culture right, if we can't work together, believe in each other, focus on the same goals, okay, we're not going to get anything done. We'll be a stagnant, bickering, unhappy group of people. And occasionally, you may have local papers that talk about boards that behave in that manner. Okay, hopefully you don't, but you might, because I've read a few of those papers over the years. People often say, well, what do you mean by culture? Well, culture is defined in some very simple bullets. Are we working for the common good? Okay, are we trying to make a difference for each child? Again, I know I'm going to come back to that too much, but that's your vision. How do we ensure the success of each child? Do we understand our role and our purpose? Okay, are we trying to be the commissioner? Okay, versus trying to be one of 10 board members that's serving kids? Are we talking about getting better? You constantly have to be, what do we need to do to get better? Continuous improvement should be driving a lot of your discussions related to that vision. Do you find a way to promote compromise? Okay, or is it my way or the highway? If it has to be your way or the highway, you're going to be really dissatisfied with your role as a board member. What's the compromise that's going to make us better? Can I listen and learn? Okay, when you come to the table, you already have data. You've already had opinions. You already have your personal feelings and thoughts. But when you come together at that table, it's when you listen and learn together. Okay, that's a critical ingredient to great teams. Because if you already know what you're going to do before you get to the table, then you haven't given everybody a chance or an opportunity to share their knowledge. And then, of course, the last one, to respect and value each other. I didn't say you're going to agree on everything or should be expected to agree on everything. You're elected because of the diversity you bring to the board. But at the same time, you still have to respect and value each other. And learning to disagree agreeably. I mean, I hate to point to any examples, but we don't have to go very far from our state to find out what happens when you can't find common ground and what that leads to. So learn to value each other, even though you may not agree, because on occasion, you're going to find that you have exactly the same mindset.
Doug, I think Betty had a question related
sorry.
right to that she put in the chat, but I'll let her articulate it.
Okay. I'll stop the share here. Hi, Betty. I think you're on mute. I do that frequently. People like it when I'm on mute, to be honest.
I was hoping my internet kicked me off before my question. You've moved ahead, But there is a concern when you were talking about board members that I've never really figured out how to articulate this. Oftentimes when a board member states, I think, or in my opinion, it is really trying to validate, am I the only one with that concern? And because you operate in kind of a majority thing, oftentimes, if no one else has a concern, then I assume, okay, well, maybe it's just me. So I am wondering, how would you best articulate, is this enough of a concern that we should bring it forth? And typically that's how you introduce, in my opinion, or I think. Is there a better way of doing that?
Probably it's okay to say, well, in my opinion, because what you're doing is identifying what you're thinking. Okay. And that's important that everyone at the table knows what you're thinking. But the problem is you might want to frame it in a little bit different mindset. Have we considered, is this an issue that we've heard about? What are the concerns related to this particular topic? There are people in the field that have indicated to me, because then what you're doing, you're moving beyond just my opinion or my insight. Because if you don't do that, then pretty soon people never hear the we in your thoughts. They only hear your opinion. So that would be probably my best insight. Probably the other thing is to think through that, and how do you frame that question for the board table that doesn't come out as an I issue, more as a we issue. Because it may be a we issue that we have to talk about, but not if it's only framed through your. I'm looking down at the screen, Betty. You're at the bottom of my screen. I think Betty and I have had some of these conversations in our past lives, but we're not going there, right, Betty? I mean, some remote, is that my one, or if it could be on my end? Jean.
I just think partly that's an experience that we're having because we're Zooming so much, and that a lot of times, you know, we would have maybe a comment or two in the hallway, or somebody you sit next to, and you might say something and realize somebody else also thinks an issue is important and should be brought up. So it's not where we're having a big group, but just a comment in passing here and there. And it can make you feel that maybe other people are interested in a topic, and then it's worth bringing up to the group to see what we all think.
Yes.
I think Zooming makes it a little more difficult to do that. And I'm really hoping that in the future we'll be able to meet in person.
Yeah. And oftentimes the chair can facilitate some of those conversations. Mr. Porter might say, Michelle, what have you been hearing in your region? Janet, what are your thoughts on this? Because that moves us beyond just, I think, okay? It moves us, in my opinion, okay? And so that would be part of the facilitation of the chair. And it's important that we all know what we're thinking as we work through that, because otherwise your people are getting lost. I wonder why we didn't do this, or wonder what they were thinking. But it's kind of the way you frame that mindset, and it's kind of the way you actually think through the process. You've all heard of mindsets. That's one of those critical ingredients. Yes, Betty. I think you muted again.
I think that the commissioner and the chair done an outstanding job with, especially as a new board member, making me feel valued and already a part of the team. And so I do want to take a minute just to compliment all of their efforts. That also includes Janet as well. She was the first person to reach out to me and I think that, can't help it. This is one time you'll have to allow me the I think. I think that has made a huge difference just in the openness that I feel for the entire board because of their effort in making sure that I understand I am valued. I think that speaks to inroads on how a person can actually come in and feel like they're a part.
Yeah, very good. And I noticed Melanie said the same thing, that it being disconnected via technology is not the same as being connected. So a very valid point. So you're dealing with the social emotional same challenges some of our students do as they're sitting at home, wondering how come they can't talk to their friends or their peers or their teachers. That's a good insight.
You know, Dr. Meckel, I might just add, I think this is a challenge for adults and students, and we've magnified it. We have all of these ways in which we can communicate. And I think we often have, in this case, in the pandemic, they're being misused. For example, email is a great way to get like an agenda, right? But it's horrible with voice. It's horrible with feeling. It's horrible with reaction. If I have and this is what's been so tough, and I know Jim and Janet feel this way as the chair and vice chair. Melanie and Betty came on. We had some face-to-face. We went immediately to Zoom. If I have a relationship with you, Zoom is a great adjunct, right? If I don't yet, it's hard because we're trying to form that, and it's just harder. And it points out to the strengths and weaknesses of all of our communication, text, phone, email, social media, and Zoom. And I just want you to know, we are doing everything we can to be back in person in February. We're going to do everything we can. Peggy and I talk about it probably every day. So I just wanted to point that out. I think it's an opportunity, and as I listen to the students today, it's when do you use what medium and how to use it effectively. And we're being forced, Betty articulated, so did Melanie, to use a medium that doesn't allow us to really come in depth, to have a discussion, Doug, as you would like to do today in small groups. Because of Open Meetings Act, we can't break everyone into small groups via Zoom. And this relationship piece that you get, as Gene and kind of Ben, I saw Ben shaking his head, the 5-minute conversation we had walking to the cafeteria together, about an issue. So thank you for pointing that out, Doug.
Yeah, and it's interesting that an email, the rule has always been, if I have to follow up on an email, then I better pick up the phone because there's been a gap. We've read between the lines in voice and tone. And so that's when you have the strong enough relationships, Zoom works okay. You're right, it's a better conduit than none, but it's not the one we need. So I'm going to move you to the next. I'm sorry, Mr. McNeese.
Push the wrong button.
That can happen.
Doug, I want to go back a little bit. Yeah, I know. Well, I don't Zoom very well. I'd like to kind of return a little bit to some earlier things and just some comments to our folks, maybe based on my experience. But we have roles, responsibility, and authority, and sometimes those get blurred. And our role is to represent our districts and communicate with them, and our responsibility is to the voters and to our districts. Our authority is pretty limited. The only authority we really have is when we sit as a board like this and we vote. And that's very much misunderstood by folks in the community, because when we visit with them, where our role is as a state board member, we sound authoritarian, like we're authority. But we're always representing the other 9 of us when we're out and visiting and what we say. And that sometimes confuses board members, both at the local level and at our own table here, over the years, I've had the experience where board members thought they were elected to run the local board. Not so. We communicate our vision and we communicate what it is we want, the direction we want the state to go. Maybe I'm not saying that as well as it could be said, but if you decide you want to run newsletters and you want to visit with boards, which we've all done, you can take it to the degree you wish with makes you feel good and makes them feel good. You know, but remember, you're only one person of a 10-member board. Thank you.
I appreciate that. I don't know, you must have read ahead in the PowerPoint slide, because those are exactly some of the things we're going to talk about next. So let's move past culture and let's talk about structure and focus. And this is just the way you operate when you're together. And I'm not going to go into a lot of detail, but this is the mechanism of how we run. Yeah, some non-negotiable goals for achievement in instruction are critical. Okay, student success has to drive. Are you monitoring your goals? Do you have goals, but we don't ever monitor them? Civility and respect. How are we going to treat each other? A professional manner in which we work together. The collective responsibility, which is what Jim was just alluding to. This is the board. And I had a great conversation with the board member who I've been visiting with individually for, oh gosh, it seems like 10 years the other day. And she indicated exactly what Jim said. Well, what do I do if I don't agree with the board? Well, it's okay to not agree with the board, but basically your insight is, I don't agree with that decision, but I support the board. Okay, because the board voted, in your case, it could be 8-2 to move forward. That doesn't mean the board was wrong. I support the board. I didn't like that decision. And that's the dilemma of politics. So remember, you're going to get a wide range of views. You're going to share a lot of insights. You're going to get a lot of insights. How do you take that and put that to productive use? Now, since you've asked a lot of questions, I want to share, I'm really old, but when my dad was a coach years ago in the central part of the state, and he had this sign up on the locker room. There's always locker room walls. There's always a sign on, and it said, wise men learn from other men's mistakes, fools by their own. I remember this is old, so it said men. It didn't say people, it didn't say women, it said men. And I was too young to know what he meant. And he looked at me, he says, well, you know, if I tell you that the stove is hot, you don't have to touch it to prove to yourself that the stove is hot. And it worked pretty good. I was probably 8 or 9 years old. So here's some insights that I want to share with you. Remember, it's just advice, but this is a little bit alluding to what Jim had talked about. There's the 3 greatest challenges of any board are the following. Are you staying focused on what's important versus what's urgent? Okay. Do you understand who you serve and what are our lines of communications and how do they work? So in a pandemic era, we've been caught in that constant driven by urgent. The phone call is urgent. The person you talk to is upset, they're angry. And so when it's urgent, it requires immediate attention. It's usually time sensitive. It's based upon a short-term fix, and it's not as important as your long-term goals. We get driven by urgency and we forget what's important. And if you want to look up this, you can look, it's Eisenhower's matrix. Okay, a famous Kansan, wonderful leader. He says stay focused on what's important, and that requires initiative and proactiveness. You got to decide intentionally what we want to do. You got to spend time focused on that work. Your work together as a board should be on what's important. This is our vision. That's what's important. It's long-term, it's strategic, and it helps you focus on what you want to accomplish. And of course, that's where you have your largest impact. So again, COVID has driven us to making so many urgent decisions. It's interesting though, we just got back and we've been meeting with superintendents and boards since Christmas break. So everyone had a couple of weeks to gather their thoughts. I'm not sure how you guys spent your time over the break, but a lot of them had some recovery time and they bounced back a little bit. And they've been telling us, hey, we moved past this constant challenge of COVID interfering in our daily lives and the daily decisions we make. And we're starting to focus on what is best for our kids again instead of this urgency. And so we're starting to plan ahead. That's your challenge. How do we move? COVID is going to be here. We're going to have to make the decisions, but what do we have in long term, okay, that's important, that's going to make a difference? So that's the first challenge. The second one is exactly what Jim was referring to. Now, it's a republic. It's a republic. And I looked up in the dictionary, and a republic, it resides in the body of citizens entitled to vote by elected officers who represent their insights. So you come from all over the state, and yes, Gene, you have a large portion of the state. I mean, a large portion of the state. But you're governing, and so you're elected to represent your district. But since it's a republic, you don't have to vote on what someone in your district tells you to vote on or vote for, because they elected you because they trust you to make the best decision for the entire state, not just their district. Now, they should have a voice. You should always share that voice. These are the things we're hearing from District 9, or these are some of the most urgent issues from District 3. But they trusted you to make the best decision to serve the common good. And that's hard, because when you go home, you get yelled at because you didn't do something they wanted you to do. But hey, this role is hard. It's a challenge to lead people, particularly when you're dealing with COVID issues. So remember, it's a republic. That third area we talked about are lines of communication. I couldn't find I did find Maryland's commissioners and their model, but the best one was probably a traditional superintendent school board diagram. Maryland had theirs up, but it wasn't very well done. Don't tell Maryland I said that. But school boards are at the top of this food chain. It really is reversed because it's a service role, okay? But connecting to that is your line of communication is directly to the commissioner. And then the commissioner's job is to connect all these other dots. As soon as you cross below that line and start connecting to the other dots, you've eliminated the ability for the commissioner to make your mission, vision happen. So you bypass those lines of communication. So be very conscious of that as you work through this. If you have a concern, it starts with you telling, I don't want to give Mr. McNeese too much credit. It starts by you reminding them that you're one of 10. But we have a commissioner that we can work this problem through. So the old saying is almost all problems are always resolved at the lowest level. So by an angry parent calling you to fix something that's going on in one of your school districts, that's probably not going to happen. Okay, now another thing they frequently refer to it as a chain of command. I'm a little less comfortable with that. But again, if you have a concern, someone comes to you, direct it to that person closest to the problem, and then it works its way through that process. We've become a polling society. I don't mean polarized, I mean polling. We constantly want to find out what people are thinking so that I can do what this group thinks. The problem is right now we're about 50-50 on every decision we make. No matter what you do, someone's going to be angry at you. So you can't control what other people do, but you can control how you respond to them. Okay, how do you work through that? So if you remember those three things as a board member, it will help you enjoy your role a lot more. I'm going to move to the last area because I'm pushing my 45 minutes is up, Jim. I apologize for that. The last area is you as an individual. Okay, and this is a critical ingredient. When I teach this, I often refer to this. These are the fundamentals of how people work together based upon the individual skills you bring to the table. Okay, and the question is really simple. You have to understand your why. Okay, why did you decide you wanted to serve in this capacity? Okay, I'm guessing because you wanted to make a difference for kids. Somewhere driving you wanted to make a difference for kids. That would be your why. So always go back to your why. And then ask yourself these 4 questions, or these 9 questions. We call these the 9 questions. And I'm not going to read them to you. I'll let you look through those because I have some answers for you on the next slide. But is learning the primary focus? Are you advocating for public ed? Okay. Do you respect the idea that we're not all going to see things the same way, including some of the people in our district we serve? Manners make a difference. Okay. Confidentiality is critical. You're going to know things and hear things that no one else gets to hear because of your role as a board member. Have you found the time or energy? Because your job, I listen to you assign committees. I hope Mr. Porter gets some good insights, a lot of thank yous for that, because you were giving people additional tasks to do. Do you understand your role as a board? And we've talked about that some, but you have to live that. You understand that the authority rests with the whole board. It's when we're together when we get to make those decisions. And then you have to work to be a team. Okay, you have to be willing to be a team. So those answers are all right here. Okay, these are the things that really make a difference. If you can do these things, and sometimes when you disagree with someone, manners and behavior make a huge difference. Okay, and understanding that we make decisions as a board. So, questions on that slide? I'm almost done. Yes, Michelle.
Thank you, Doug, and thank you, Jim McNeese, for talking about the entire state. And that's one thing I try to keep in mind as I was doing town halls in my area, the area where I serve and represent, is that I made sure that I told them that I have general supervision of all of the children and students in our state, not just in our area, but in general supervision. And and I felt that being transparent, being accessible to those parents that had those concerns, that I wasn't stepping on toes of the local boards. I was down there I was elected just as they were elected by the same people, because it's in the district where I represent. And I felt the need to be there to answer those questions of those constituents that didn't feel like their board was was not representing them. So even though those are locally elected people, and then they hire a superintendent or whatever, however that, I know how that works, but I felt that I needed to say that at the very beginning, that I have general supervision. So when we vote, like you said, we vote, I'm voting as one of 10. Sometimes it doesn't always go 10-0, or, it might go 8-2 or 7-3. But when I voted back in July, it was I voted locally. I voted for the rest of the state. I didn't want 4 districts to represent the entire state of Kansas. And that's the way it would have gone down, in my opinion. And that's the way I felt like I needed to get that out there, as far as I was representing the rest of the state, because we had areas in the state that didn't even have a case, not one single case. And why would we shut them down? So I feel like if we think about that as the entire state, and think about the other districts, you have to represent the people that elected you, but you also have to represent the entire state. And I feel like when we go into that and and we're transparent and we're accessible, I think people appreciate that more. I think if the more you're out there and the more you're communicating, you can do it in newsletter, whatever works best. But I think it's best to be accessible and answer those questions openly and honestly. And I think that that's the best way we can move forward, is being transparent and being accessible. Thank you.
Very good. Jim.
Thank you. I think I'm going to follow up with what Michelle said, in that not only being accessible, I got more calls Monday than I normally get in a month, and they were all unrelated, and they were all valid, and they all were based on the fact that they did not believe that they had been listened to. That, sometimes you get calls that they're all related, but these were completely different issues. And it seemed like Monday was the day to call Jim. And I listened to those people, and I couldn't solve their problem because it was a local problem. But I tried to guide them in how to go about it. And in each case, they really appreciated the fact that they'd been listened to. And one of those calls was 45 minutes. And I didn't say much because they needed to listen to. Now, I want to talk about 3 or 4 different other things. I didn't know any member of this board. I'd met Janet, but I didn't have a relationship with anybody on this board until I became a member. I'd met Janet when she had made a presentation to superintendent's group at one time. But I value my relationship with the board members, and I believe that we've become friends. And I think that's extremely important for us to respect each other. I have voted in the minority on a number of occasions, at one time 9-1, and I was the one, and I was the chair at the time. We've all voted in the minority except our 2 new members, and I can assure you, you will at some point, because that's the way it works. But I believe that we respect each other, and so we vote and move on. I would like, and then I'm going to shift gears and say, I want your opinion on this. I would think that at some point in the near future, when we can meet together, to have a workshop without an agenda, so we can just talk. So Betty can say, I believe this, or I heard this. Now, what are you hearing in your district? You know, what are the things that are bothering people in your district? What are the things that are going well in your district, so we can better understand each other, so we can work together that way. And then one other completely unrelated issue, I know that KASB visits or does presentations with a lot of school boards. Would there be any benefit, and I'm not going to, you don't have to answer this question now. I have 70 school boards that that are in my area, whereas Betty has 4 or 5, or Melanie has, a few, and Jean has all the rest. So, if I went to a school board, meeting a month, it would take me 5 years, which exceeds a term, to do all those. And I typically don't go unless I'm invited. Would there be any possibility or any benefit for, whenever you're doing a presentation for a board member, for us to attend with you so that we could listen to what they're saying? If we were invited, if that was okay with the school district.
Yeah, that would be the key. They're almost always open to the public. I mean, there's on rare occasions when they have executive session material planned, but for the most part, they're always open. And at the planning session, and I want to validate your insight, Jim, that the best conversations boards ever have are when they get to talk about the ideas without having to vote, because that's when you get to know where people are coming from and what their thoughts are, and the opinions that they bring to the table. And that's where you build your relationship. You said trust, and trust creates that because we know where we're at. So yeah, that's not unusual that we do that. I'm guessing that I've been doing some of them via Zoom now, but I've got a few of them face to face here in the next month. But that's certainly something, if they were comfortable with, yes. Occasionally we have a few people who attend besides the board.
And Mr. Porter, it may be, as we discuss this further, with everything's been said, that we want to have a discussion when we're back in face-to-face, how we could work with KSB at the annual convention a little bit differently. I know that we've been included on some panels and things, the board has, but maybe there's a better opportunity to engage in a different way there.
I think working with school boards is probably an area that we need to, that we have the opportunity to step up and do that a little better. Because I'm invited to school board occasionally, but certainly I haven't been anywhere near the 70 in my district.
Gene?
Well, I just wanted to say it takes me 7 years if I want to go to a board meeting every month. And that, for a lot of us is not going to be a practical way to actually meet board members. But I do know that in non-COVID times, KSB has regional meetings and things like that. And I think it would be worthwhile to maybe participate in some of those and just be accessible to those board members and have them get to know us, and not for the purpose of polling what their issues are, but more for us to gain an understanding of what they're dealing with, so that we make better decisions at our level. I think for the most part, I have to depend on the educational support center meetings, superintendent meetings, and things like that, because there are just so many districts, and I've been able to get out to a lot of them with Dr. Watson and more remote areas of the state, but that's kind of limited now. So I think when we can get groups of people together and participate in that, it makes it a little bit more accessible for folks.
Very good. Anne?
Thank you. One of the things I found most helpful is just participating in the superintendent meetings that they have weekly with Greenbush. There'll be 80 or 90 superintendents there, and Bart's always real good about if I have something to say, he'll give me a couple minutes to say it. But the most interesting thing is just to listen to see what their issues are and how they're dealing with it. So if you have service center superintendent meetings, listen in, they're great. And believe me, if they have a complaint about the state board, it's a good way to hear about it too.
Janet, did you have your hand up? Oh, Janet, yes.
Yes, I did. Thank you very much. No, I agree. I think as having served as a local board member for many, many years prior to serving in this position, I feel strongly about local boards and local control. I'm still pretty passionate about all that. However, when I first became a state board member, I attended a lot of things for KASB. In fact, I even went to the national convention, I believe, the first year I was on the board, and because I felt so strongly about local boards, and it really helped me to stay in touch with my local boards. Now, of course, subsequent to then, I go to board meetings occasionally. In fact, I was at Leavenworth Monday night prior to this meeting. But here's our challenge, Doug, and so I'll just throw it right at you. I attended as many as I could. I always tried to attend the state convention and all those things, and even regional ones. And then all of a sudden, they started charging us. And each of us are very limited on our budgets, so we have to kind of pick and choose of what we can do. And so that's one of our big challenges as a board, is when we attend your meetings, we have to register like like everybody else
Sure.
does, I guess you might say. So
Yeah.
Anyway, that's one thing I'd appreciate if you might consider, doing that.
Yeah.
But also I want to go a step further and say, I think it's really important that we do stay close to our superintendents. I really believe I've got a very good relationship with all my superintendents. Couple of things I do, I try to stay in touch with them. If there's a big issue coming up, I will contact all of them and ask for their input. But whenever I have a new superintendent, I go visit them one-on-one, because I think it's important that they know who we are and we know who they are. And like I say, I've attended a lot of board meetings, and I really appreciate it when I attend those, and because it's exciting, but yet I'm cautious too about attending them, because I don't know whether I should really go unless I'm invited, or I could call the superintendent maybe and say, what do you think about me attending? So anyway, those are just some thoughts. Thank you.
Very good. Well, you've identified some critical insights. All of you have. As listening to this, I can think of, there's a few words in the English language that are very powerful. My wife taught me a long time ago to say, I'm sorry. That's a good one. That's a very powerful one. But how can I help? Janet, you just identify when you talk to someone, how can I help? That's a very powerful thing, because people understand that. So I'm I'm going to apologize. I just have a couple more things to remind you of, and then I will let you go to the concluding events. So some of the best insights I can share for individual board members, this is that last section. Listen and learn. Listen and learn. The more knowledge you gain, the better insights, the better decisions you can make, the more opinions you will hear, which really helps, because then you don't think that everyone says that, everyone, always, never. Those aren't very good terms. Okay, that doesn't usually exist. You're going to hear a lot of different perspectives. Okay, and the perspective you bring will determine what you consider the truth. But remember, there's someone else who sees the same perspective and views their insight as the truth. So how do you work your way through that to get the good data to make the best decisions? Remember, there's a difference between opinions and highly reliable data. You know people right now in your lives that have an opinion, and they're going to stick to it regardless of the facts. Because in my opinion, this is what so get the data, and ask. If you don't have enough data, ask for more to make a better decision. And then of course, the last one, this is, don't get stuck with that mindset of, I have to be the smartest person in the room, that Mr. Know-it-all. You've all known someone like that, and they're hard to work with. They're hard to be around. They're hard to learn to trust and live with. The smartest person in any boardroom is the people in the boardroom. That's the smartest people in the room. When you put your heads together, you're going to make good decisions. Okay, it's just that's the way it works when you have enough insights, enough knowledge, enough good data, and you've listened and learned together. So I try to do that I feel bad, Chairman Porter, I did not do 45 minutes, but thank you for your service. You drive so many of the important things that we do, and so much of the good work we do for kids starts right there at the Capitol. I'm sorry, next to the Capitol in your office, making a difference for our kids. And I thank you for all the service you provide us. So, Mr. Chair, I am done.
Thank you, Doug. We certainly appreciate you being here. We look forward to continuing working with you, as your insight and help is always appreciated and very valuable. And so we appreciate that very much. I need to remind my colleagues on the board that our next meeting is February the 9th and 10th. If it's at all safe, we're going to try to meet in person. We may have to do some social distance arrangements, but if that's what has to be done, because I think all of us have expressed a desire to be together in person, if at all possible. The communications committee and the liaisons, remind you that we have a Zoom meeting at 4:30 this afternoon, and I want to, so we can start working on a plan, on the communication and legislative plan. In that case, until February the 9th, we are adjourned.